When women make the transition to motherhood, often their work requires a transition too. Sherene Strausberg experienced just this after she had her first child and then her second child. And thankfully, an opportunity presented itself where she could transition from being an employee to running her own business. Let's listen to Sherene Strausberg's story of starting 87th Street Creative. The work that you're doing is really interesting, and I'd love to hear, take us back to the beginning of your journey. What first inspired you to start your own business, 87th Street Creative?
Good question. So it started somewhat out of a need and a desire to have some work-life balance. That was really the biggest impetus for it. I had my first child, who at the time that I started my business was 3 years old. So just imagine a toddler with all the rocket ship energy that he had. And I'd actually just had a second child who was 6 months old. And I was like, how can I be with them? How can I spend more time with them? I really struggled with like the maternity leave that's sort of offered in this country. That's not great. And I just was like, what am I going to do? And really an amazing opportunity had come along while I was working full time with a friend who was asking me to do freelance work for her. And after I guess about 6 months of that freelance work, I was working the full-time job, taking care of the kids, and then working 3 hours for her at night. She said, what will it take for you to leave your full-time job? And I was like, double my rate, give me more hours, fly me out to meet the team. And she said, done. And 87th Street Creative was born. And I was, obviously excited about this freelance opportunity, but behind all that in my head was like, I can spend more time with my kids and be more available.
That's wonderful. So this was a client of yours, and she just loved working with you. She saw the value, and she said, tell me your price. And you told her, and she said yes. How did that make you feel at that moment?
I mean, that was like the greatest thing ever. Sometimes I feel like she's a little bit of like a guardian angel for me. And it was one of those things where it was like an old friend who had, known me when I was in graduate school, and kind of sort of followed along in my career, on social media, and had just sort of like reached out to me randomly. And so what it got me thinking, that is advice I give to my kids a lot, is like, you have no idea where those opportunities are going to show up. So there's a saying I often say, listen carefully because opportunity knocks softly. And so it's like, this wasn't, a friend who I was hanging out with every week, or a client I was like, trying to sort of online sleuth and follow and comment and get work from. It kind of fell out of the sky, but it was built on a sort of, how do I say it? Like a stable of like good connections over many years. And what she actually said to me is, she had invited me to her wedding years before, and a friend and I were supposed to go to the wedding together, and he bailed and he was not feeling well. And so she's like, oh, are you going to cancel too? And I was like, no way, I'm doubling down. Now I'm going to bring my husband and my kid, if that's okay. And she's like, yeah, great. And it was like that memory from like 3 years earlier had stayed with her, and was like, she needed a dependable, creative freelancer to do work for her. And that memory came to mind for her, and was like, yeah, I'm gonna reach out to Sherene.
That's wonderful. It's amazing. You mentioned opportunity knocks softly, and to listen carefully, which I love that. And we never know what impressions we make on people, but being able to show up and be loyal and follow through with that wedding invitation clearly made an impression on her.
Yes.
So what
exactly.
kind of work were you doing for her?
So at the time, I was really focusing on graphic design, which is like the work I do now is motion design. So it's graphic design that moves. So what I was doing then was simply graphic design, static assets. But to be more specific, she was working at a company that did simulations, like game board simulations for corporate companies. So think of it as like, we did a project for Northwestern Mutual that was building like almost like a Monopoly game, but all tied to Northwestern Mutual. So it was like all the cards, all the, game pieces, the instructions, it was all in that world of the company. And obviously it was branded. So it was a thrilling opportunity. It was like, oh my God, I get to make a game board and I get to make little pieces. Like, how fun fun. So that work continued with a whole bunch of companies. And it was like, I'd never heard of simulation, like corporate simulations, but they happen and they're real. And then of course it led into more digital simulations, and then it actually led into motion graphics. And so I was starting to do animated videos for bigger companies. McKinsey and Company, was doing video animations that I got to start on next. And that kind of helped launch my movement into the world of motion.
So tell me about this movement.
Yeah, so I mean, I got really excited about motion graphics because it really felt like my whole career coming full circle. Because prior to graphic design, I had worked as a film composer and sound engineer in Hollywood. So it was like the rhythm, pacing, and timing of music and film with the visuals of graphic design really all come together in motion graphics. So it just felt like a very natural progression. And, a lot of this kind of happened around like 2020, 2021, when it was like, because of the pandemic, like everybody's online, everybody's looking for content. I also saw a lot of like educational videos that my kids were being sent as they were doing like Google School, as they called it, and they were terrible. So I really started leaning into, okay, I really want to be doing much more motion graphics, to the point where, within a year or two of that, of like 2020, I was not taking any logo designs. I was only taking logo animations and, further projects like explainer videos and training videos, all animated.
And I understand you have a goal around these moving
Yes. Yeah.
logos.
Okay. So I'd like to do 100 animated logos, which I feel like is possible. Every 10 that I do, I make a little like reel, like a little demo reel of them. So because I've done 26 or 27 at this point, I can't remember. I've done 2 demo reels that are up on my website of those 20 logo animations. I have a long way to go, but people keep asking me like 100 by the end of the year. And I'm like, I don't know if I'm putting a time bound on it yet. I don't know, 100 before I retire, maybe? I don't know, like 100 before the next millennium? I don't know.
Well, the last time we spoke, which was just about a week ago, you were at 24. So you've been making some
Yes.
progress.
Yes.
That is good. And where can we see these reels? You mentioned your website. What is your
Yeah.
website?
Yeah. So on my website, if you go to the portfolio, you go work and then hit portfolio, you'll see there's 2 demo reels of logo animations, set 1 and set 2.
And
And
what is your
eventually there'll be
URL?
10. Oh, I'm sorry. It's 87thstreetcreative.com. So 87th street spelled out creative.com.
Fantastic. Wonderful. And then we
Yes.
can go there and be directed, as you mentioned, to the drop
Yeah.
downs. So that's wonderful. Well, I encourage anyone to check that out, especially if you have a small business, medium business, global business, because the animated logos are a wonderful idea. And what makes you so excited about these animated logos?
Yeah, so I just sort of feel like right now, there's so much content out there that, everybody has a website and everybody has a lot to say on their website. There's a lot of text. People are now finally starting to put a little more, images. But when you see a logo that moves, just kind of, it goes into this, your inner child of feeling like, ooh, that's fun. We also just did a logo animation for an oncology company named Owl, and we actually helped them. They were rebranding, and their creative agency reached out to me and said, well, we actually want to show the owl flying from the old logo to the new logo. And I mean, to me, that was like, I don't know, that takes logo animation to a new level. It was very, very cute. And just seeing this owl come to, their like little mascot come to life. And so, and it's funny, we have done like several animal animations in logos. There's another logo that has a bird, like an eagle in it for the school MSHS 223 in the Bronx. It's called F&T, Finance and Technology, and it's home of the eagle's nest. And so there's a little eagle that flies into their logo as we animated it. So anything with an animal is definitely fun. But a lot of other ones can really be, it can just really infuse your business's brand with so much personality.
Wow. Well, you're getting me excited about
animated logos. So I imagine that the viewers are also getting excited.
I hope so.
Probably,
Yes.
yeah, they're probably already logging on to see your reels right
Yes.
now.
Yes. Well, now I'm saying, you got to go and hit contact me and set up a meeting with me. I would love that.
That's true. Why not? Let's make your 100 logo animations a reality by the end of this
Yes.
year. Why not? It's possible.
Absolutely. Yep.
So you mentioned the oncology company. I know you've worked in education. You've worked in a variety of industries. You've supported a lot of different industries, but I understand that your heart really is in the healthcare space. Can you tell me why your heart is in the healthcare space and what you're looking to do as you take on more healthcare focused clients?
Yeah, so I just sort of feel that the healthcare space is sort of ripe for some explaining, for some better communication. And it can be, there's so much of healthcare. This is such a wide topic. It could just be in health insurance alone. Let's explain that, right? But a lot in explaining illnesses, explaining medications. There are just so many places where it's like, okay, we can't see it, we can't feel it, we can't touch it. It's something I like to say our business, we go where cameras can't. And so it's this idea of like, well, maybe, we did a video for for ulcerative colitis, and I always say, it's like, nobody wants to see your colon except for your gastroenterologist. But we the client provided an illustration of a colon, and it was very, like, it felt destigmatized. Like, it was like, oh, okay, there's this cute little thing. We're going to have a camera go through it. We're going to show parts of it where there's inflammation. And it just takes a lot of stigma away. And I think that even specifically in healthcare, women's healthcare, there are still so many taboo topics, it's getting better. So I don't want to be all doom and gloom, but whether it's infertility or menopause, or breast cancer. A lot of these things, ovarian cancer. There's so many topics that, there's still a little bit of like a taboo or a misunderstanding or some stigma around it. And I think animation can be such a great tool to take that stigma away.
That is a wonderful initiative. And many a times we have a personal experience to really bring up passion and interest in our life. I understand that you went through an experience that brought this closer to home for you?
Yeah. I actually now have something called CIDP, chronic inflammatory demyelinating pernot. Oh my God, it's so hard to say. CIDP, chronic inflammatory demyelate. Forget it. I'm not even going to sound it out. But it's basically polyneuropathy, which means that you lose feeling in your body. So, it sort of started in my feet and then it went to my hands. It actually was starting to tingle on my face. And if it went untreated, I would eventually, it would come to my central nervous system and it can kill you. But obviously I didn't wait that long. But the biggest challenge was that I went from hospital to hospital and doctor to doctor and tried to get the correct diagnosis. And I got a lot of misdiagnosis. I went to see a doctor in Mount Sinai. I went to see a doctor at NYU. Eventually, a doctor at Columbia Presbyterian was the one who really kind of identified it. But even more specifically, he really found a great treatment because previous treatments had given me some terrible experiences. Two times I spent a week in the emergency room in the hospital from side effects. And then I was also on a very high dose of steroids as a treatment, which I gained 30 pounds and I got early onset osteoporosis. So all these side effects. And eventually I found a doctor who found a really good treatment of subcutaneous immunoglobulin, which is unfortunately very expensive, but there's some coverage by my insurance. And we now have a diagnosis. And it's just took a long time to get there. So
many of the times, our purpose stems from the challenges that we experience in our life. And as a certified coach, if you are experiencing a desire to uncover your purpose so that you can bring more meaning into the work that you do, I invite you to check out authera.com. So let's listen to Sherene's story and discover how her challenge unlocked her purpose.
So going through something like that, there's, of course, it's tough, right? And
Totally.
you clearly had the desire, the will to keep looking for a solution. And when you come out the other side of an experience like this, I'm sure you have so much gratitude, which I can sense in your tone of having a solution, having a diagnosis, which equals answers and equals opportunities to resolve what you're experiencing. But what were some of the takeaways that you're now applying to your work and to your purpose here in the world?
Yeah, I mean, I think for one thing, it's like, okay, how do we find information? How do we find good information? When I was sort of first given this diagnosis, the first thing I did was, of course, Google it, because we all know we go to, Dr. Google. And there was an animated video on YouTube about CIDP. And I saw that video actually before I got into animation, but I just remember thinking, wow, this is a helpful video. I really like this. And I believe it was the CIDP Foundation that had made the video and posted it. So, why can't every, medical foundation have a great video? And of course, that video at this point, it's probably almost, 15, 20 years old. Probably needs some updating. But, it's like, okay, how do we make that video not only very informational, but make sure it's inclusive, make sure that it feels like, it is touching on, different people and different populations. So, we just did a video for the Los Angeles County Public Health Department, and we had to translate it we got translations and had to create subtitles for 9 different languages. I mean, it was a very tough thing to do and to make, to execute it well and get those, translations in especially languages that don't use the Roman alphabet, but we were making it inclusive. And so that's another thing that I think a lot about when I am working on, healthcare videos is like, does it feel inclusive? Does it feel like it's, able to really be read or viewed or seen by many different populations and feel like it, is made for them?
And what about that inclusivity, that level of inclusivity as far as different populations feeling like they can relate to it? What's that so important about creating that in your work?
Well, I mean, I know DEI is kind of on the outs right now with our, current administration, but I think it's really important to feel seen. And a lot of times, smaller populations don't feel seen. And I mean, when I say smaller populations, I mean, it could still be, women who are about 50%, of our population. This all started very early on, actually, when I was working with that first client who I was brought on as a freelancer. It was one of the very early motion graphics videos we did. And they had brought in another motion graphics artist to work on other videos because there was so much work. We were all doing several videos and we each had different industries. I was working on videos for like the chemical industry, and another motion graphics artist was working on a video for the banking industry. And his characters throughout the video were stick figures. The typical sort of, head, arms, body, legs. And I kind of pointed out at one point that I was like, that stick figure character is sort of the universal symbol for a man. So you're kind of implying like there's no women in the financial industry. And there was like this long pregnant pause in the room, and everyone in the room was a man. And I was like, oh God, what have I done? And then finally someone said, huh, you're right. That's the symbol for, using a men's bathroom. So therefore that is implying that, inadvertently. And so they kind of changed it so that it was almost more like a character where it was like a body and a head, in a circle, almost like that kind of avatar icon, like when you log into an app. It felt more inclusive. And it was saying, okay, any population or person can be working in finance. So it's so important to me.
Well, that idea of being seen, that is very key, especially in the healthcare industry, especially if you're experiencing some sort of pain or challenge, health issue, something that is preventing you from living your life to the fullest. So I'd like to shift the focus onto the success you've had at 87th Street. And I know you just recently became B Corp certified.
Yes,
So what does
I
that
did.
mean for you?
I mean, the biggest thing it means for me is that I feel, again, I feel seen. I'm in a community now of other businesses that are B Corp certified. I just actually attended their conference last month, which is every other year. So I won't get to do this again until 2028. But I just felt very seen and very much like, oh, these people have the same values as me. I mean, everything that I was doing to get B Corp certified, helped get that certification, but I was doing it well, for years before I was B Corp certified. And it's like I didn't have to change very much. It was more like I needed to just codify it, put it into policies, put it into statements, put it up on my website, that kind of thing. So, we make sure that, we are recycling, any old computers or electronics or things like that, or batteries that we're using. I try to take public transportation as much as possible. We have only one car for 5 people. So what else? One thing about B Corp is it's not just planet oriented. It's sustainability for people on the planet too. So one of our goals is we hire only women contractors, female or non-binary contractors. And that's really important to me because it's a very male dominated industry. And I felt like I was overlooked by the industry because I wanted a flexible schedule and I wanted to work from home, all pre-pandemic times, but that just wasn't possible. And so most of the women I hire are also moms, so that there can be a really flexible schedule and not sort of tied to like a day schedule, but more of a milestone schedule. Okay, we need to be getting, the storyboard done by Friday. We need to have the first round of animation by next week, things like that, as opposed to I need you to work, 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. It's like it doesn't work always that way for moms. So.
Wonderful. Well, I love that you're creating an opportunity for women and moms to have that flexible schedule, just like you desired. So you created this for yourself, but also for other women. And
if you find a problem, find a solution.
Yes, there you go. And that is a lot of times where people are guaranteed success, is providing solutions to problems that they themselves are experiencing.
Yes, exactly right.
So another important area of focus and investment and putting energy in is in your continued growth. So you mentioned that you're always growing and learning. And why is that important to you? When did you start doing this and what does it look like?
Yeah, I mean, I just always remember a great quote by Mark Twain, never let school interfere with your education. And I sort of define that as like, it means like, just because you graduated and you got your certificate and you're done with school, it doesn't mean you have to stop learning. And so I was taking a lot of classes, throughout like my 30s and early 40s, taking classes online, taking classes in person. I did some classes at NYU. Some continuing, there's a CPS, School of Continuing Professional Studies at NYU, where you can take amazing classes. I was also taking classes at an online animation school called School of Motion. And after I took, I believe, 6 classes, I actually became a teaching assistant for them. And so, and I think now even with things like YouTube, the School of YouTube or Masterclass, there's always more to learn and more to do and grow from from those experiences and from those classes. I even early on in the pandemic, I was kind of getting almost a little bit burnt out just because I wasn't going out and talking to people. A lot of times it was like being with my family and being on my computer. And so I wanted to find an outlet for creativity that was not digital based. And so I learned pottery. I learned how to do I guess they call it wheel pottery, where, you're kind of making vases and cups and bowls and mugs. And I did it for a few years and I have a whole catalog online of all the projects I made. I mean, I probably made like 30 different vessels of varying sizes. But it was just such a wonderful experience to learn something and to try new things. And it's like, just because we grow up, it doesn't mean we need to stop learning.
And that's a great quote by Mark Twain. I don't think I've heard that one. So thanks for sharing that today. That's wonderful. So looking ahead, what are you most excited about for building next or this next chapter for 87th Street Creative?
Yeah, so I'm really excited to obviously dig in even more into the healthcare space. I really want to connect with in-house marketing teams at hospitals. I think those are great resources to, how to get out a lot of important information, whether they're doing, medical studies or outreach to communities. So I'm definitely really excited about leaning, so much more into that super niche area of women's healthcare. I'm also excited to really lean into my women-owned certification. That's something where I do love that community, and there's obviously that incredible synergy, and I really feel like there's so much opportunity, not just to work with corporations, but to really work with other WBEs, women-owned business enterprises. I don't do strategy. I don't do, a lot of the marketing messaging, but we do animation, and I can be, a subcontractor to prime contractors that are, creating the strategy or creating that messaging. So I'm really kind of looking forward to that. And same thing for the B Corp community. I think there's some opportunities there as well. So I sort of feel like I'm trying to not go as wide, but go deep and say, okay, what are these communities that I really want to lean into, and also, let's hold off for a second, and how I can support them. I get really excited when I was just when I can connect people that I know and, be supportive for them. I was at a conference 2 weeks ago, and I met someone who does real estate in commercial healthcare, selling buildings to hospitals. And I was like, oh wow, I don't know anything about that. But then the following week, I met somebody who is a project manager for construction of commercial buildings. And I was like, oh, I feel like those two guys should meet, and I was so excited. I was I have really no idea what the two of you do, but I think the two of you could have some great synergy, and I'd really like to make an introduction. They actually just connected this week. So yeah, how awesome is that, right? To just be a connector. And I really have a huge thrill about being of service and helping other people to make good business connections.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So what's one thing you would love our viewers today to walk away with?
Oh, wow. I would say think about how animation can elevate your brand or explain something that your company has not been able to explain, whether it's a product or a service. It could even be internal, like some sort of process or software that internally you're using and trying to get your employees to use, but they're not getting it, right? We can help with that. So think of something really complex that needs to be simplified and explained visually with animation.
If you found Sherene's story inspiring, then I invite you to also watch this video. And remember, you deserve to have a career that you absolutely love. You can do it. I believe in you.